Welcome to the Rare History Channel. 13 Things You May Not Know About Cesar Chavez. Cesar Estrada Chavez was born in Yuma, Arizona on March 31, 1927. In the late 1930s, his family lost their homestead to foreclosure. They joined more than 300,000 people who moved to California during the Great Depression and became migrant farm workers. Chavez dropped out of school after 8th grade and began working in the fields full-time. In 1946, he joined the U.S. Navy, serving for 2 years in a segregated unit. After his service was over, he returned to farm work and married Helen Fabella, with whom he had 8 children. In 1952, he became a grassroots organizer for the Community Service Organization. This was a Latino civil rights group. Over the next decade, he worked to register new voters and fight racial and economic discrimination, and rose to become the CSO's national director. Fact number 1. He inspired Obama's "Yes, we can" line. During a 25-day fast in 1972, Chavez and Huerta coined the slogan "Si se puede," Spanish for "Yes, it can be done." It became the UFW's official motto and a rallying cry for Latino civil rights in general, and later inspired the phrase, "Yes, we can" for former President Barack Obama's 2008 election campaign. Number 2. One of his 31 grandchildren is a pro golfer. Chavez and his wife, Helen Fabella, had 8 children and 31 grandchildren. One of their grandchildren is professional golfer Sam Chavez, who plays on the PGA Tour. Number 3. A U.S. Navy cargo ship is named after him. An array of American streets, schools, and even a national monument are named after Cesar Chavez. But he also spent 2 years in the U.S. Navy, and since Lewis and Clark-class cargo ships are named after American pioneers and visionaries, the USNS Cesar Chavez debuted in 2011. Number 4. He attended 38 different schools before 8th grade. As migrant farm workers, Chavez's family moved often when he was young. That resulted to his changing schools 38 times. Despite his own limited schooling, he advocated education as a means for social improvement. He did not like school as a child for various reasons. One was he spoke only Spanish, but the teachers only spoke English. Second was because of the segregation. Third was because he felt that education had nothing to do with his farm worker way of life. In 1942, his father was involved in an accident. He did not want his mother to work in the fields, so he became a migrant farm worker. Number 5. His view of immigration was complex. Chavez opposed illegal immigration since the beginning of UFW, arguing undocumented workers could be used by employers as strikebreakers and undermine the pay for legal workers. As public opinion about amnesty shifted over time, though, Chavez eventually softened his stance. Number 6. He lost support for meeting with a dictator. In 1977, Chavez was widely criticized for accepting an invitation to Manila by Ferdinand Marcos. This was a 20-year president of the Philippines accused of human rights abuses and corruption. Chavez hoped to win support from Filipino-American farm workers. The meeting with and his endorsement of Marcos was a gross miscalculation. He listened to Filipino union leaders within the UFW who painted Marcos as a friend of the farm workers movement. They convinced him that endorsing the tyrant would help strengthen the UFW's support among Filipinos. It was a major political blunder. This should not overshadow his contributions to the fight for civil rights in the U.S. Number 7. He was interested in the anti-drug cult Synanon. In his later years, Chavez studied modern management techniques and group dynamics. This included a strange drug rehab program, alternative lifestyle community, and religious cult called Synanon. The UFW was struggling from dwindling members and motivation. His view was to turn it into a movement. This is when Chavez fell under the spell of a cult leader, Charles Dedrick, who founded Synanon. He brought a practice from the cult called the game to UFW, in which people were put in the middle of a small arena and accused of disloyalty and incompetence. Meanwhile, a crowd watched their humiliation. He ended up exiling or firing many of the members. Number 8. He rejected JFK. Former President John F. Kennedy reportedly offered to make Chavez head of the Peace Corps for part of Latin America in 1962, but Chavez declined so he could continue trying to organize farm workers. That was the same year he and Huerta co-founded the National Farm Workers Association. Number 9. He was inspired by leaders. Chavez was reportedly inspired by the nonviolent activism of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. He also found inspiration in Saint Francis of Assisi, a 13th-century Italian nobleman who gave up his wealth to work on behalf of the underprivileged. Number 10. He fasted for 36 days to protest pesticides. Under Chavez, the UFW helped secure union contracts that required protective clothing to reduce workers' exposure to pesticides. It also prevented spraying while workers were in the fields. He also fasted for 36 days in 1988 to protest pesticide use on grapes. He called it a declaration of non-cooperation with supermarkets who promoted, sold, and from California table grapes. He was against the pesticides that were being used on the land. He completed his 36-day fast for life on August 21, 1988. The Reverend Jesse Jackson took up where Cesar left off, fasting on water for 3 days before passing on the fast to celebrities and leaders. Number 11. He was a vegetarian. I became a vegetarian after realizing that animals feel afraid, cold, hungry, and unhappy like we do, Chavez once said. I feel very deeply about vegetarianism and the animal kingdom. It was my dog boycott who led me to question the right of humans to eat other sentient beings. Number 12. Chavez was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Cesar's motto, "Si puede." Yes, it can be done, embodies the uncommon legacy he left for people around the world. Since his death, hundreds of communities across the nation have named schools, parks, streets, libraries, and other public facilities, as well as awards and scholarships in his honor. In 1994, President Clinton awarded Cesar the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. As a common man with an uncommon vision, Cesar Chavez stood for equality, justice, and dignity for all Americans. His universal principles remain as relevant and inspiring today as they were when he first began his movement. Number 13. He got Americans to boycott grapes. He harnessed public outrage to achieve unprecedented gains for farm workers. He caused more than 17 million Americans to boycott grapes to help California farm workers win contracts. He gave people a sense of their own power. Farm workers discovered they could demand dignity and better wages. Volunteers learned tactics later put to use in other social movements. People who refused to buy grapes realized that even the smallest gesture could help force historic change. This uproar resulted California to pass the landmark Agricultural Labor Relations Act of 1975. This was the nation's first law which guaranteed farm workers the right to organize, choose their own union representative, and negotiate with their employers.